So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Melissa so we can stay on time here. Melissa has been a consultant with Citrus for the past 5 years. Her primary role is that of mentor coach of Western New York, working with 20 of our Buffalo public schools engaged in the Citrus Character Counts Comprehensive Character Development Initiative. Melissa also serves as a consultant for the Citrus Grow Model, a continuous school improvement process. Melissa earned her bachelor's degree in social work from SUNY Brockport and her master's degree in mental health counseling from Medaille College. A native of Buffalo, New York, Melissa has over 25 combined years of experience and training in the areas of character and positive youth development, social work and human services, programming, and events development and coordination. Thank you for joining us, Melissa, and take it away. I'm going to exit the stage and let you take over. So
great. Thank you so much, Suzanne, and welcome to all of our attendees today. It's so great to be here with you today to talk about the value and critical importance of relationship building in schools. I'd like for you to imagine feeling a sense of positivity as you walk through the doors of your school. Envision an environment where students and adults alike exude and internalize a sense of welcome, acceptance, encouragement, and personal value. Relationships are key to building a positive school culture. If you're just joining us, please, I welcome you to share in the chat where you are from, your school or organization, and your current role or job title. Thank you so much. Our objectives for today include to appreciate the transformative power of relationship building, to reflect on the value of relationship building between adults and students and how it requires intentionality, to consider the impact relationships can have on school climate. And today we'll discuss 5 character-focused practical strategies that can help build connectedness in your school. I'd like to thank Suzanne for sharing in the handouts a summary of today's webinar. Feel free to download that at your convenience. Provides a summary of our content from today, as well as some reflection questions and my contact information. So what do we mean by character? When we think of character, we think about the qualities, values, and morals that are distinctive to each of us as a person. We think about the way we think, feel, and behave. If you're not familiar with Citrus, Citrus is a nonprofit education consultant organization whose focus is character. Citrus is an acronym for character, integrity, trust, relationships, and success. When you have good character and integrity, people are more likely to trust you. With trust, you build relationships, and relationships are the foundation to success in all areas of our life. I'd like to invite you to share in the chat one word that you would use to describe a healthy relationship in your life. Relationships are so important, and there's so many components to relationships. I welcome you to share one word that you would use to describe a healthy relationship in your life. Honesty, trust, very important. Respect, thank you. Friendliness, love, caring. Those are all great examples. Kindness, communication, very important. Thank you. Those are wonderful examples. I appreciate those great shares. So I'd like to start today by sharing what I hope to be inspirational quotes on relationship building. Connection is the key to successful classroom management. So not only does relationship building in schools help to create that positive school culture, it also helps in the areas of classroom management and behavior management. I'd like to reference an example from one of the Buffalo public schools that we work with, school number 17 Early Childhood Center. A second grade teacher shared with me that at the beginning of the school year, she invited her second grade students to help her create classroom expectations. So she didn't just come up with them on her own, rather she invited her students to be a part of that and to talk about what is important to them as expectations within their classroom. So together they created those expectations, they posted them, and regularly visit them throughout the school year. And that teacher shared with me the positive impact that had on her class, not only in terms of relationship building, but in terms of classroom and behavior management. So I just thought that was a great example. I love this quote by educator Rita Pearson. Every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection and insists they become the best that they possibly can be. And if you haven't yet heard Rita's TED Talk, Every Child Needs a Champion, I strongly encourage you to listen to that. I did put the link on the webinar handout, the webinar summary handout. Every child is one caring adult away from being a success story. One caring adult, and that adult can be you. We all can make a difference, and I think we all can think back to adults in our lives who made a difference for us. Building strong relationships with our students is key to letting them know that they're valued members of the learning community in this classroom and in the school. Helps them to know that they're not just another number in the classroom or in the school. They are an individual. Their teachers and adults in the building know their name and they care about them and care about their well-being. And finally, I just wanted to share this image that I think speaks for itself and speaks volumes in why relationship building is so important with our students. Next, I'd like to talk about some of the benefits and value of relationship building. What I love about the benefits and value of relationship building is that it's mutual, including the opportunities to express care, to offer support, to challenge personal growth, to share power and responsibilities. We don't have to do everything on our own. It's okay to ask for help and to invite our adult colleagues as well as students to assist us with our responsibilities. And finally, the opportunity to expand possibilities within ourselves and with others. I recently wrote an article on the value of relationship building in schools, and Suzanne is going to share that article in the handouts. So I welcome you to take a look at that when you get an opportunity to, but I just want to share a couple of key points from that article. When there is a sense of connectedness, the school becomes a place where all desire to be, and where engagement and productivity are at their best. A school culture that places value on relationships creates a sense of community and common purpose. Students are more likely to be engaged and to succeed when they feel connected to school. They'll be in a better place to learn, both mentally and emotionally. And finally, teachers. Teachers are more likely to enjoy and remain positively charged in their role, resulting in greater chance of teacher satisfaction, output, and retention. All right, so let's get into those 5 practical character-focused strategies that help build school connectedness. All right, and those 5 strategies include identify your role models, commit to relationship building daily, encourage and model positive relationships school-wide, use everyday opportunities to connect, and establish and/or rebuild trust. Let's take a look at those strategies. Strategy number 1, identify your role models. Identify and reflect upon your own personal role models. I'd like to ask each of you to think about who made a positive impact upon your life, and in turn, how you can do the same for students and adult peers in your school. We're all continuous learners. No matter how old we are, we still can continue to learn and continue to be inspired and encouraged and uplifted by others. So I have some questions here, and if you would like to share in the chat, when you think about role models in your life, who positively impacted your life and how? What impact would you like to have upon another? And what actions can you take to be a role model for a student or a colleague? So I invite you to share in the chat who a role model was in your life and how they positively impacted your life and how you can do the same for others. We see here from Lorraine, Her mother was a role model in her life. Thank you so much, Lorene. That's a great example. And while you're taking some time to think about and share your role models, I'd like to share a few of my own. I'd like to start with Dr. Barbara Peters. She is a former assistant superintendent from the City of Tonawanda School District, where I completed a year of service as an AmeriCorps volunteer and where I also was a high school alumni. For me, Dr. Peters modeled positivity and genuineness. She always had a smile on her face and genuinely cared about her job and about those she was serving. I remember walking through the halls of the schools with Dr. Peters. She always had a smile on her face, and she greeted every person she would pass by. She would smile and let them know, "It's so nice to see you today." She would ask how their day is going, and she genuinely cared about them and their responses. And I don't know about you, but I tend to take on some positive mannerisms from other people, and that is one that I've taken on from Dr. Peters. And I noticed not only did it make me feel good, but I believe it made others feel good, and it also helped with that relationship building. Next, Dr. Bridget Marinaccio. She was a former college professor when I attended Medaille College's mental health counseling program. And for me, Dr. Marinaccio modeled relationship building with her students. She made an intentional effort to build those relationships and help us feel connected not only to the academic content, but to her as an instructor. And she also tied real life examples of experiences that she had to the academic content that she was teaching. And for me, that really helped me to better understand what I was learning. Coaches. So throughout my life, I participated in organized sports from elementary school through college. And I remember having great coaches who modeled caring, encouragement of personal growth and development within the sport, and the importance of teamwork and being a team player. Next are former students. I've worked with students over the years who modeled and taught me about trust, courage, resilience, and most importantly, staying real, even through adversity. And finally, my mom, a lifelong mentor who modeled for me the importance of helping others, giving of oneself, working hard, and staying positive. So I'd like to just take a look at some of the role models that were in responses that were shared in the chat. Jack Norton shares Dr. Frank Roberts was a science teacher in high school. He was a model teacher. Dina shared her father, former professor in her leadership program. And Gary shared the first superintendent that I was blessed to work with was a role model for him. And Katie shares her college advisor inspired her to be a better person and student. A lot of great examples. I encourage you to take a look in the chat and see some of those wonderful examples of role models for some of our attendees. Let's move on to strategy number 2. Commit to relationship building daily and don't leave to chance. The don't leave to chance, I would like to thank one of our attendees who's here with us today, Gary Smith. Gary is the master trainer for character counts, as well as a retired superintendent. And Gary was the trainer for the participants in the Buffalo Public Schools, who are a part of our comprehensive character development initiative. And within Gary's training, I remember him saying, in regards to character building, don't leave it to chance. So thank you, Gary, for inspiring that. It's important that we commit to relationship building and keep it a daily intentional focus. Things that we can ask ourselves, what is one way that I can connect with a student or a colleague today? Pick one person each day, even if it's just a smile, and ask how their day is going. And really important, ensure that every student in your school has a relationship with at least one caring adult who initiates that personal contact. I know some schools have programs such as Check and Connect. It's just so important that every student feels they have at least one adult that they can go to and that checks in on them to see how they're doing. Next, I'd like to share just a couple of quick examples of ways that the Buffalo Public Schools commit to daily relationship building. And these are some things that I've witnessed as a mentor coach in the Buffalo Public Schools, and I've seen the positive impact that it's had upon students and the entire school community. Restorative circles and daily check-ins. So within the classrooms, they take a few minutes each morning to get together to check in with one another to see how they're doing, and to participate in restorative circles where students are sharing maybe, examples of challenges they're facing, and they're learning to empathize with one another and building those relationships. Character lessons, greeters in the school. So a lot of schools will have adults and students who stand at the doors at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day to greet both adults and students as they are entering and leaving the building. Another example is older students who serve as mentors to younger students. I love this one. So in a couple of schools, they actually allow the older students to go into the classrooms of the younger grade levels to facilitate those restorative circles and those character lessons. What a great opportunity for the younger students to look up to those older students, and for those older students to be role models for those younger students. Another great example is positive shout outs for both students and adults. So there's a couple of schools that allow positive shout outs, so they can either post them on a bulletin board in a main hallway in the building, or they can share them over the morning announcements. So they are recognizing positive things that are happening in positive ways that their peers are making a difference in their school. Monthly service, learning, and community service projects. So this is an example from Buffalo Public School number 97, Harvey Austin, who was recognized in 2020 as both a state and national school of character. They incorporated a monthly student service learning project initiative. This is where every classroom in the building was participating in developing and carrying out a service learning or a community service project each month. And at the end of that month, they would get together for an assembly and share out their projects. It was just a great way for students to be engaged and to be taking a look at some of those issues that are happening within their school community and out in their greater community, and be a part of the solution to those issues. And then just one personal example I would like to share. Dr. Jim Newton, who's a former principal and former superintendent from the Tonawanda City School District. So something that Dr. Newton would do that I saw as an example of intentional relationship building is he would stand outside at the corner every morning before school and every afternoon after school to greet the school community as they came into the building and as they left the building. So snow, rain, sleet, whatever the weather was, you would always see Dr. Newton out on that corner welcoming the school community. And I just thought that was a great example of an intentional relationship building. So I welcome you to share in the chat examples of how you personally do or can connect with students and adults in your school, and or a practice that may be in place in your school to build school connectedness. We'll take a moment and see if we have some examples of that. Thank you so much for those who are sharing in the chat. I appreciate that. It's always great to hear ideas and practices that are in place from other schools. And as we're waiting for some folks to share some examples, I'd like to share this image. This is from Buffalo Public School number 61, Dr. Arthur O. Eves School of Excellence. Second grade teacher, Mrs. Vangelista, invited me to come in to observe their morning restorative circle. I loved this opportunity. As you can see, the students are positively engaged, lots of smiles on their faces, even a little boy to the right who's sticking his tongue out, but they enjoy their morning circle. It was an opportunity to check in. Up on the board, you can't quite see it, but it is a character lesson. There's a prompt for a question, and each student had the opportunity to share, and they listened to one another, and they really just were so positively engaged. And then to the left there, that gentleman is actually a volunteer grandparent. He would come into the classroom and help out on a volunteer basis. So not only are the students developing relationships amongst themselves, but they're developing a relationship with their teacher, as well as another caring adult in the school. I just love that. All right, so we have some folks who shared some examples. Gary shared having relationships with colleagues to encourage them to pick his brain and serve an ear to listen to their challenges and opportunities. That's a great example. Suzanne shared, smiling, greeting students and adults every morning starts a day out right. Absolutely. Morning check-in from Dina. Yes, that is a great opportunity because we never know what our peer adults as well as students are coming to school with. Everyone faces challenges in their life, so it's great to have the opportunity to share in the morning and to get that day off to a positive start and to know that they are cared about in their school environment. And finally, Barbara shared sending personal letters whenever students did something great or participated in a meaningful activity. I love that example. Thank you so much. All right, let's go on to strategy number 2 and encourage and model positive relationships school-wide. I think it's really important to encourage relationship building amongst all members of your school community by promoting the value and importance between adults and students alike. The entire web of relationships matters. We also can set an example by our attitudes, words, and actions. We've heard the saying, do as I say, not as I do. Well, I would like us to think of it as do as I say and as I do. I'd like to share with you next this great video on the power of relationships in school. Just need a moment here to share my screen. I think you'll really enjoy this video, and it's about 3 minutes long. And if you need to, please go ahead and adjust your volume.
You had so much time. What's going on? Strong relationships are central to the learning process. What the science of learning and development tells us is that we need to create learning environments which allow for strong long-term relationships for children to become attached to school and to the adults and other children in it. When children have experiences of closeness and consistency and trust, oxytocin is released. Oxytocin has many, many positive effects on the development of the brain. So when we think about a relationship, we're not just talking about being nice to a child. We're talking about a child having an experience of attunement and trust strong enough to release the hormone oxytocin. Good morning, Ariella. How you doing today? The purpose of the morning greeting is to connect with them and to just make sure that I'm seeing them as humans. Like I'm making that relationship with them, making that bond. I prioritize relationship building because getting to know them is the best part of the job. When I come in the morning, we usually talk about things that are happening in our community. We're trying to build caring and respect. The teacher is trying to understand who I am and my values as a person. When I have a free 45 minutes or an hour, I think to myself, I could sit down and catch up on grading, or I could go and make connections, whether it's a smile or a joke or a reminder. It validates their presence in the building. Rock it out in the art room. It starts from so much honesty and transparency with kids. It's really easy to strive to be this like idealized, always ready to go elementary school teacher, and that's not real and that's not human. When people start talking about other things while I'm still giving direction, it feels frustrating for me and I have to take a breath. My students connect most with me when they see that I also struggle and I also have challenges. It takes a lot of vulnerability on my part.
When that student knows that you care about them, when they know that you're a human, their academic performance in your classes can be better.
If I'm comfortable around them, then I'm more confident around them, and it's easier to ask questions and things like that. So when you're looking at this graph, what is it that you think happened?
Some teachers I don't always get along with the best, so then sometimes I'm like, I can't do it, so I'm just not gonna do it. But when I like the teacher, I want to do their work. I'll be like, I can learn this.
You all have done outstanding work.
Emotion and learning are completely connected. If you're in a positive emotional space, if you feel good about yourself, your teacher, that actually opens up the opportunity for more learning. Good to see.
I love that video. And I truly feel that it demonstrates the critical importance and value of relationship building schools, and not only how it builds connectedness amongst the school community, but also how it helps to build the character within our students. Strategy number 4, use everyday opportunities to connect. Ask engaging questions. How are you feeling today? What is one thing you learned today? What are some of your hobbies? So expressing that personal interest in others. So when we're in the hallway, classroom, office, cafeteria, or the building entrances, take that opportunity to make eye contact with others. Smile and say hello, offer an encouraging greeting. There are opportunities within every day and every moment. And finally, strategy number 5, establish and or rebuild trust. So I think it's important that we recognize when connections may have become disconnected and or when trust may have been lost. So renewing those connections that may have been disconnected during remote learning, for example, renewing a relationship where trust may have been lost, and then establishing new relationships and connecting with new staff and students to help them feel welcomed. I love this quote by Stephen Covey. Trust is the glue of life. It's the most essential ingredient in effective communication. It's a foundational principle that holds all relationships. All right, so finally, just to recap those 5 strategies: identify your role models, commit to relationship building daily, encourage and model positive relationships school-wide, use everyday opportunities to connect, and establish and or rebuild trust. I'd like to wrap up today by sharing a couple of quotes. This is actually 2 quotes that I put side by side because I felt they went well together. The strength of our student relationships makes the difference in translating our passion for teaching into their passion for learning. And no significant learning occurs without significant relationships. And finally, to improve our schools, we have to humanize them and make education personal to every student and teacher in the system. Education is always about relationships. Great teachers are not just instructors and test administrators. They are mentors, coaches, motivators, and lifelong sources of inspiration to their students. And that's from Ken Robinson. I absolutely love that quote. So I'd like to thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to take a few minutes to open up to questions that you may have. So please feel free to share questions and or feedback in the chat section. And don't forget those handouts that we shared with you today, a summary of today's webinar, as well as my article on the value and importance of relationship building. And while we're waiting for any questions that you may have, I just wanted to share quickly and finally on the Citrus Grow model, which is a continuous school improvement process that guides and supports schools in examining their current culture, climate, and successes, challenge areas, as well as school improvement goals. If you would like to learn more about Grow, please visit the Citrus website. The address is right there, citrus.org/grow. You may also reach out to me personally, or you can reach out to Suzanne, our director of the Grow model, as well as Nichelle Ahmadiyya, who is our deputy director, and their contact information is there on the screen. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll take a few minutes for that. I do thank you again for being with us today. It was my pleasure and opportunity to talk with you today about relationship building in school. Thank you so much. All right, I do see a question in the chat. Why is it harder for secondary teachers to promote and advocate for relationship building with schools? That is a great question, Gary, and we've heard that from many of the schools that we work with, that they do find it, it's a little bit more challenging to engage, those grade levels. So if anyone has any thoughts on that, please feel free to share your feedback in the chat. We appreciate that. Content. So Dina talks about content. Yes, and being very focused on content. Yes, that's understandable. I know it's a lot of content that you need to cover, and sometimes that becomes the main focus, and it might be challenging to focus on other things. But what we like to say is remember that character is not another item on the plate, as well as relationship. I feel that both are the plate. So.
All right. Well, we'll still keep it open for questions. If you have any questions, just remember that the handout is in the worksheet, and summary is in the handout section, which is on a tab by the chat polls, and then handouts is the third tab there. Let's see if there's any other questions. All right. As we're waiting for any other questions, I just wanted to thank you again, Melissa, for joining us and for being our guest presenter today. I think this was very engaging. It's such an important topic right now in education, and especially with COVID and trying to get back to, I guess, some sense of normal, or a new normal, as a lot of people are calling it. I think we've struggled with relationships being, in a remote situation for so long, and then hybrid, and, still trying to kind of get back to some sense of normalcy. So let's see if there's any more comments. Kids cannot learn if they don't feel good and safe in your classroom. Yes, it should be their why. Kids, oh, here's some more messages. All right. Elementary teachers are by nature generally more nurturing. Very true. It's easier to play that role when students are young enough to want someone to care. Many times older students find it uncool to engage with teachers. It's true. It is definitely more difficult. But I come from a middle school background. It was a senior high, and definitely a different skill, to connect with the middle school and high school kids. But so many teachers did such a wonderful job of it. And I think what I saw most often is just caring about them and who they are as an individual, and, seeing what's important to them and what's going on in their life outside of school. That seemed to be, the kids and adults that had the best relationships. So, all right. And some other positive comments here. So, thank you again, Melissa, for being with us today. Thank you to all of our guests here on our webinar today. We do have webinars each month, so check out on citrus.org website, and you'll see all the upcoming webinars. We have one next month coming up in March. I don't know the date in front of me. It's March 24th. So wonderful. All right. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for being with us today.